My dear children, good morning. Welcome back to Geography Lesson 3, our Changing Earth, Part 4. In our previous class, we studied about the lithospheric plates, endogenic and exogenic forces, volcanoes, earthquakes, the major landforms of the earth and work of a river. We will discuss about the erosional and depositional work of sea waves, working of moving ice and work of wind in today's class. Children, the coastal areas are under the constant action of waves, currents and tides. Hope you all notice that. Okay, the coastline, the coastal areas are under the constant action of waves, currents and tides. Tell me children, what are waves? Waves are a disturbance on the surface of the sea or ocean. What kind of disturbance? The stronger the wind, the larger the wave because of the energy transfer. Okay? Next, what are tides? Tides originate in the oceans and progress towards the coastlines where they appear as a regular rise and fall of the sea surface. The third one is currents. What is a current? Tell me. Yes. The term current describes the motion of the ocean. Tides create a current in the oceans, which is the strongest near the shore and in bays and estuaries along the coast. These are called tidal currents. Oceanic currents describe the movement of water from one location to another. Okay, tides are made by the rising and falling sea levels with the action of gravity, while waves are formed when several factors relating to the wind and water interact with each other. Tides are formed because of the interaction of the gravitational forces between the earth, the moon and the sun. Is it clear? Waves are formed because of the force exerted by the wind on the water surface. Now, can you differentiate the difference between waves and tides? Can you differentiate? Yes. Repeating again, tides are formed because of the interaction of the gravitational forces between the earth, the moon and the sun. Waves are formed because of the force exerted by the wind on the water surface. Okay. Now, the most powerful agents of marine actions are waves. The erosional and depositional work of sea waves give rise to coastal landforms. Can you understand? Okay. Now, look at the picture carefully. The powerful sea waves dash against the coast and dissolve or break down the rocks into fragments. Many large and small cracks develop on the rocky surface. In due course of time, these cracks become widen and form large cavities. Can you understand? With the continuous action of sea waves, these cavities develop into sea caves. Dear children, look at the picture carefully. The powerful sea waves dash against the coast and dissolve the rock into fragments. Many large and small cracks develop. In due course of time, these cracks became wider and form large cavities. With the continuous action of sea waves, these cavities develop into sea caves. Can you understand this? Okay. When a headland projecting into the sea is attacked by sea waves from both sides, okay, a thorough passage is created. This is called sea arch. Okay, this is called a sea arch. When the roof of the sea arch is further eroded, it collapses. Okay, the pillars of rocks are left standing in the open water. These are called stacks. The steep vertical wall facing the sea is called a sea cliff. Can you understand? Okay. Repeating again, children. See here that when a headline projecting into the sea is attacked by sea waves from both sides, a thorough passage is created. This is called sea arch. When the roof of the sea, see here, when the roof of the sea arch is further eroded, it collapses. The pillars of rocks are left standing in the open water. These are called stacks. Okay, the steep vertical wall facing the sea is called a sea cliff. Can you understand? Okay. Now, the depositional work of the sea waves is a slow process. Beaches are formed by the deposition of sand, gravels and rock particles on the shore. These are generally formed when the sea is calm and winds are of low velocity. Beaches are formed by the deposition of sand, gravels and rock particles on the shore. They are generally formed when the sea is calm and winds are of low velocity. Can you understand, children? Sandbars. When the debris eroded by waves is deposited on the sea floor, near the coast, sandbars are formed. Can you understand? The debris eroded by waves is deposited on the sea floor. See, look at the picture carefully. You can see the debris. Okay, near the coast, sandbars are formed. A lagoon is partially enclosed lake between the coast and some form of barrier such as the sandbars. Okay, so it's a partially enclosed lake. Lagoons are partially enclosed lake between the coast and some form of barriers such as sandbar. Can you understand? The Chilka Lake in Odisha, the Pulikat Lake, in Tamil we are calling as Palaverkadi Eri, okay? That Pulikat Lake along the border of Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh. And the Vembanad Lake in Kerala and Ashtamudi Lake on the Kerala coast are some lagoons on the eastern and western coasts of South India. Can you understand, children? Okay. Dear children, let us move on to the next topic, that is work of moving ice. The snow which falls in higher altitudes accumulates on land to form snowfields. You know very well. Okay. The snowfields are situated above the snow line. The line above which it is too cold for the snow to melt even in summer is known as the snow line. Okay. Snow line means the altitude and latitude above which is too cold for the snow to melt even in summer is known as the snow line. The river of snow and ice which moves very slowly is called glacier. Glaciers are powerful agents of erosion. Okay, in my previous class we discussed about the glaciers. As a glacier flows, it carries rock fragments and gravel with it. These rock fragments act as a tool of erosion. A glacier with the help of rock pieces forms various features of erosion. When the glacier passes through a valley, these rock fragments rub against the sides and the valley floor. This creates U-shaped valley with a flat bottom and almost vertical sides. In the mountains, a glacier carves deep hollows, forming an armchair-shaped depression called corries. Corries. Later, when the ice melts, this basin is filled with water, forming a lake. This lake is called Tarn, T-A-R-N. Okay. Moraines, see here, glacial moraines. Look at the picture. When the glacier starts melting, its capacity to carry load is reduced. Thus, rock materials are deposited on the sides and floor of the valley. These deposits form glacial moraines. Dear children, see the picture. When the glacier starts melting, its capacity to carry load is reduced. Thus, rock materials are deposited on the sides and floor of the valley. These deposits form glacial moraines. Can you understand? Okay. Dear children, our next topic is work of wind. Yes, wind also performs the work of erosion, transportation and deposition. Okay. The role of winds in altering the landscape is particularly noticeable in deserts. Yes, you have watched this in several movies. Okay, where the wind blows freely in the absence of vegetation and the soil is sandy, dry and loose. Okay, that role of wind is in altering the landscape is particularly noticeable in deserts where the wind blows freely in the absence of vegetation and the soil is sandy, dry and loose. In the absence of moisture, rock fragments lie loose on the surface. A strong wind carries with it a large amount of sand, dust particles and gravel. These loose materials act as a tool in eroding the rocks. Okay. In few areas, the work of the wind is limited to a few meters above the ground due to the inability of the wind to carry the rock particles high up in the air. Near the ground, its work slows down due to friction with the surface. Therefore, the ideal height is about 25 cm to 75 cm above the ground. The wind erodes the lower part of the rock more than the upper part. Such rocks have a narrow base and a broad top. These are called mushroom rocks or rock pedestals. Okay. Dear children, the work of a wind is limited to a few meters above the ground because of the inability of the wind to carry the rock particles high up in the air. Near the ground, its work slows down due to friction with the surface. Therefore, the ideal height is about 25 cm to 75 cm above the ground. The wind, see the picture, the wind erodes the lower part of the rock more than the upper part. Can you see this picture? Such rocks have a narrow base and a broad top. They are called mushroom rocks or rock pedestals. Okay. Loess, the depositional work of wind starts when its speed declines. That means the speed reduces or some obstructions. Okay, some barriers like trees, bushes, forests, buildings, etc. come in its way. The fine dust particles deposited extensively is known as loess. It is porous and rivers cut deep valley through it. It is deposit as silt, usually yellow in color and very fertile. The most extensive deposit of Loess is found in the Loess plateau of Huangpu River basin in China. Okay, children. An important feature produced by wind deposition is a sand dune. Sand dune means a hill of sand formed by the accumulation of sand and shaped by movement of winds. These sand dunes vary in height from a few meters to as much as 300 meters. The windward slope is gentle while the leeward slope is steep. Sand dunes are generally formed in groups. According to their shape, sand dunes may be classified into crescent sand dunes or longitudinal sand dunes. These sand dunes are not stationary. They keep shifting according to the direction of the winds. Migrating sand dunes pose the hazard to human settlements, forests and farmlands. Dear children, let us have a short recap on this lesson. In our previous class, we discussed about the endogenic exogenic forces. The landscape is continuously worn away by two processes. They are weathering and erosion. Weathering is the breaking up of rocks on the earth's surface. Erosion is the wearing away of the landscape by different agents like water, wind and ice. The eroded material is carried away or transported by water, wind, etc. They deposit material eventually. This process of erosion and deposition creates different landforms on the surface of the earth. Okay, next point is work of a river. When the rivers tumble at steep angles over the hard rocks of a deep, steep valley, it forms a waterfall. Example, Victoria waterfalls or Niagara waterfalls. Okay. The running water in the river erodes the landscape. When the river tumbles at steep angle over very hard rocks or down a steep valley side, it forms a waterfall. When the river enters the plain, it twists, turns and forms large bends. These bends are known as meanders. Due to continuous erosion and deposition along the sides of the meander, the ends of the meander loop come closer and closer. In due course of time, the meander loop cuts off from the river and forms a cut-off lake. It is called an oxbow lake. In our last video, I explained about that. At times, the river overflows its banks. This leads to the flooding of the neighboring areas. The flood water deposits layers of fine soil and other material. They are called sediments along its banks. This leads to the formation of a flat, fertile land called a floodplain. The raised banks are called levees. Levees. As the river approaches the sea, the speed of the running water decreases. The river begins to break up into a number of streams. They are called distributaries. Distributaries. Now the river becomes so slow that it begins to deposit its load. Each distributary forms its own mouth. The collection of sediments from all the mouth forms a delta, D-E-L-T-A, delta, a triangular shaped landmass. Okay. Next, the erosion and deposition of the sea waves form coastal landforms. Sea waves continuously strike at the rocks, cracks develop. In course of time, they become larger and wider. Hollow-like caves are formed on the rocks. They are called sea caves. As caves become bigger and bigger, only the roofs of the caves remain. This leads to formation of sea arches. Continuous erosion breaks the roofs and only walls are left. These wall-like features are called stacks. S-T-A-C-K-S, stacks. The steep rocky coast rising almost vertically above seawater is called sea cliff. Okay, the steep rocky coast rising almost vertically above seawater is called sea cliff. S-E-A-C-L-I-F-F, sea cliff. The sea waves deposit sediments along the shores. This leads to formation of sea beaches. Glaciers are rivers of ice. They too erode the landscape by bulldozing soil and stones to expose the solid rock below. Glaciers carve out deep hollows. As the ice melts, they get filled up with water and become beautiful lakes in the mountains. The material carried by the glacier, like big and small rocks, sand, silt, gets deposited. These deport from glacial moraines. Can you understand, children? Our next topic is work of wind. An active agent of erosion and deposition in the desert is wind. In deserts, there are numerous rocks with a shape of a mushroom. They are commonly called mushroom rocks. Winds erode the lower section of the rock more than the upper part. Such rocks have narrower base and wider top. When the wind blows, it lifts and transports sand from one place to another. When it stops blowing, the sand falls and gets deposited in low hill-like structures. These are called sand dunes. When the grains of sand are very fine and light, the wind carries it over very long distances. When such a sand is deposited in large areas, they are called loess. Large deposits of loess are found in China. Okay, dear children, this brings us to an end of this lesson. Take your textbook and read the entire lesson. Thank you, children. Stay home, stay safe, and stay blessed. Thank you.